Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
We're going off on a bit of a sort of tangent now. I don't know how much attention you pay to Twitter. Occasionally, something starts bubbling away on social media that sort of merits rather closer examination. And one of the strangest things to have happened this year involves the actor Ralf Little, who probably slightly irritated by being described as someone you probably best know from the royal family, but you know, we've all got our crosses to bear. Having a row with the Secretary of State for Health, Jeremy Hunt. And it wasn't so much... See, I knew that Ralf Little had dropped out of medical school in Manchester when he got offered the part in the royal family. So I just watched it perhaps a little more closely than I would have done when a so-called lovey is having a pop at a politician. And what was most remarkable about it was the level of engagement that Jeremy Hunt indulged in. I'm joined by one of the protagonists in this story. I'm not offering any prizes for you guessing which one it is that's deigned to visit the studio today. Actually, I don't think that's entirely fair. I'm not even sure we've invited Jeremy Hunt, but he's got a lot on his plate at the moment. I'm not here to judge, as it were. I'm here to learn. So, Ralf Little, what prompted you to question the Secretary of State for Health? And I suppose, in the spirit of the Daily Mail, I should also add, and who the hell do you think you are to do so?
Yeah, well, look, I never meant to be this. I never meant to be in this position. I didn't think. Do you know what I'm going to do for the remainder of 2017? I'm going to become this kind of avatar or spearhead the challenge to spurious statistics and facts from politicians. But I think I should lay it out straight away before I carry on. I haven't. I'm not a Tory voter, but I do think, who knows in the future?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a Tory voter. For me, this is not about party politics. I would be absolutely doing the same thing, or I would have done the same thing, whether Jeremy Hunt was Conservative or Labour or Greens or anybody else. So you know, there's been a bit of traffic on Twitter going, well, actually, people supporting me on Twitter going, well, that's what the Tories are like. I'm trying to avoid all of that kind of thing, because I think the NHS is bigger than any of that.
Yes, absolutely right. And the tribalism is killing off debate in so many different areas that it's quite healthy to hear someone recognising the dangers of it.
Absolutely, and you know, it's our greatest achievement, the NHS, and it belongs to everyone. And talking about, you know, once we lose it and it's gone, it really is the most vulnerable, weakest and poorest people that are going to be in trouble. So that's something I should say out of the gate. Anyway, look, I follow because I'm interested in this kind of thing. I follow on Twitter, and I sort of had a dialogue with several junior doctor activists. My younger brother's was a junior doctor during the junior doctor strikes and all that kind of thing. So I have a vested interest in it. And I don't know. Jeremy Hunt was on Andrew Marr's show and started making a load of claims, and I watched these claims, and then I sort of saw Twitter coming up, the comments coming up, and I had a bit of a conversation with some of these doctors, and I was just incensed by the fact that these claims were simply, provably not correct. These stats were not correct, and so I simply tweeted, a little bit rashly. I've got it written down here. So, no, I haven't got it written down. So something like, this is what it looks like when a man knowingly goes on television and knowingly lies to the British public.
Knowingly lies being an interesting...
And then I thought, if I'm wrong, Jeremy Hunt, sue me. I was angry, and yes. I was a little bit overconfident. I think, in hindsight, that was probably a regrettable choice of words.
The knowingly lied.
Yes, which has become the crux of the argument up to now.
Yes.
So I said that, and I was angry. And the truth of the matter is, I tweeted that in the heat of the moment and never thought anything would come of it. So it got retweeted a few times.
It's a lesson here for Twitter users.
I've had it both ways.
It's like that bloke when that boxer came round threatening. Do you remember when someone tweeted something about a boxer who turned up on their doorstep threatening to chin them?
I know.
So always be aware.
There is a massive lesson in that. It's happened both ways to me as well. I've kind of angrily tweeted something and then thought, I'll delete that. Yes. 20 seconds later, and the genie's out the bottle, and so it's gone both. So this way, on this occasion, people are sort of backing me up, and on the other occasion they really weren't. And there's a real lesson in that: is be careful with social media.
Yes, indeed.
Obviously, I didn't learn my lesson, but anyway. So I tweeted it. I was amazed as anybody when he replied to me.
Yes.
And I'm not quite sure why he thought he would get involved, but he replied to me and said, and throughout a load of facts, he said, on my watch, 4,300 more mental health workers, and other stats that he threw out. And then he said, isn't it your job to find a European country that's done better and faster in this time? That's it. I said, so on my original tweet, I said, sue me, I double dare you. And he went, isn't it your job to find a European country that's done better or faster? I double dare you. Now, I'm not one to resist a challenge. So I thought, all right, okay. First of all, it's not my job.
No.
I mean, I really have a feeling that he underestimates the responsibilities of professional actors, but...
Yes, although you were at medical school briefly.
Yeah, well,
so
I was there for a whole 4 or 5 weeks.
Well,
so
it's more than he was.
Well, that's true. So, not facetiousness aside, I was like, okay, I need to... I will take this on. I'll take this on and I'll research it and I'll talk to people.
Why, Ralph? I mean, we'll have plenty of time to explore the fruits of that research. But tell me about what got your dander up on this. What do you think?
I was already angry, obviously, when I sent the initial tweet. And when I think I felt a little bit brushed aside, a bit dismissed.
Okay.
And I wonder if I was somewhat underestimated by him.
A little bit of know your place.
Yeah,
type.
know your place, and you're an actor, and come on. In later tweets, he said, "Oh, you're a funny bloke," but
yes, he did.
it's a sort of a, for me, that's like a compliment. It's an insult veiled in a compliment.
Also, he doesn't know that you're a funny bloke because usually you're delivering scripts written by other people. When you're being,
that is true.
when
Yeah,
you're being hilarious.
That is true. That made me. I felt a bit dismissed, and I was like, okay. And also the truth is, I want to be fair.
Yes.
And I try and be fair. I made a very big claim, which was kind of regrettable, and I was like, I probably shouldn't have said that. And then
but it's Twitter, so you go for the big hit.
And then he said, go on, then I challenge you, and I was like, okay. I need to back up my claim. That's only reasonable if I'm going to say that about somebody. So that's why I sort of sat down and spent a good few days researching, and then put together a 42 tweet thread, breaking down very specifically all the facts and figures, and to be fair, backing him up on one of them. Two of them were completely spurious, and I broke down exactly why they were not true. And then one of them, he'd actually undersold his achievements. So I sort of went out of my way to go, as you can see, I'm just trying to be fair and have reasonable transparency and discussion, which is kind of where we find ourselves now, kind of waiting for.
And so, I mean, you're keen to have this debate with him, are you?
Well, here's the thing. In the build-up to all of this, Stephen Hawking, there are several things that have happened, and one of them was Stephen Hawking said, Jeremy Hunt, the NHS is under threat, and what worries me is that Jeremy Hunt is cherry-picking statistics. Now, cherry-picking statistics is quite a scientific principle. Ben Goldacre writes about it in Bad Science, and it's easy enough for the layman to understand, but nonetheless, you have to, there's a certain amount of scientific understanding between what cherry-picking is and why it is so dangerous. Because a cherry-picked statistic isn't necessarily untrue, it just deliberately or otherwise doesn't show the full picture. So Stephen Hawking said Jeremy Hunt is cherry-picking statistics, and it's making transparency difficult, and the NHS could be under threat. I think that's the gist of what he said. And Jeremy Hunt replied, I think on Twitter and I think in the papers, basically saying to Stephen Hunt, "Oh, I'm sorry, mate, you're wrong, and I think you're lying." Was the gist of what he said. I think he said the most pernicious falsehood to Stephen Hawking. Now, the thing about Stephen Hawking is, literally his job is to analyse evidence and work out and use that to theorise the most extraordinary things that most of us can't comprehend. If anyone knows about what cherry-picking statistics is and how evidence works, it's Stephen Hawking. If he's telling you that you're getting it wrong, you listen.
You would have thought so. You would have thought so. But this is 2017.
Yes. So I was following all this, and all of this happened. So then Jeremy Hunt said, after Stephen Hawking made his point and then sort of made a dignified retreat, Jeremy Hunt then continued to go, "I still notice, Stephen Hawking, you haven't taken me up on my invite to debate."
Right.
And I was like, all right then, okay, if you're so keen,
Hold my pint, Stephen.
Yeah, exactly. Hold my beer, Stephen. Yeah, yeah. And while you're at it, I'll tell you of the theory of time.
Yes.
So I thought, okay, fine. If he's so keen, then let's do this. So I got all the facts and figures, and I put those down, and I said, what I would like to do, Mr. Hunt, is I'd like to chat with you for transparency, not to be antagonistic, not to be horrible or unpleasant or call names. I would like to chat to you with some junior doctors present, because they know they're on the front line, they're on the ground in the NHS, and some fact checkers, so that we know that facts and stats can't just be thrown out randomly. And that's where I left it.
Yes.
And so far, it hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened so far. Because he would claim that you haven't proved that he was deliberately seeking to mislead the public.
Well, this is where we stand. This is kind of why I came on here, because
sure.
I think that I could have. He replied to my thread
with 26
with 26
tweets or more.
tweets,
I mean, it's a quite remarkable thing for a Secretary of State to do, and not necessarily. I mean, it could be to his credit.
Listen, I think so.
Yes.
I genuinely think so. I think it's really unhelpful to say that people are unpleasant or evil or stupid or whatever. I genuinely think that I think it's very possible that we live in a world in which Jeremy Hunt thinks he's saving the NHS and is doing a great job. And you know what? It is not an easy job. It's not an easy job. What I'm asking for is simply, mate, a bit of transparency. The stats that you're throwing out there aren't true. So can we talk about them and figure this out? Because the public needs to. I don't even think the public would mind if somebody went, this is really difficult and the NHS is struggling. I think where the problem comes is going, everything's going really well, I'm doing really well, don't worry, and it's just simply not true, or it's certainly not the full story.
It's politics, though, isn't it?
It is, but like I said at the very start of chatting to you, it's the NHS. It's not well, the Labour don't do this and with it. It's the NHS. We need to know what's going on with it. We need to know the truth of the matter. We need to know the biggest fight of all with the NHS is always, we need to know that it's not being privatised on the quiet.
Well, that's another concern at the moment, isn't it? With Stephen Hawking has also contributed to.
That's the biggest concern. I mean, that's the big fight. Whether or not that's going to come around soon, I don't know. But that's the big fight, is the NHS being privatised under the table or otherwise. Again, something I would like to ask the man.
Face to face.
Very politely, face to face.
I interviewed him once.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but he insisted that we do it standing up. It was the strangest experience, or one of the many strange experiences of my so-called career. I had to do it standing up. We tried to work out why afterwards. I wasn't working here, I was working for someone else, for the Beeb. And we figured that it must have been so that on camera it could look as though he'd just stopped.
Swung by.
Even though I was in the Department of Health in an office that his staff had put us in where we set up our crew. But if he could do it standing up, then if it went in a direction he wasn't comfortable with, he could possibly walk away without having to do a whole... I don't know. I was just trying to theory
how weird.
What it might have been. So, yeah, be careful what you wish for.
Well, we'll have a standing-up debate with me and fact-checkers.
Exactly. We'll come back in a minute and have a look through some of the... So some of the sort of points of contention. You're listening to Ralf Little and James O'Brien on LBC, where we find ourselves in the, as I say again, frankly, any year but 2017, this would have seemed slightly surreal, but a sort of self-appointed scrutineer of government at a time when many members of my profession, particularly on the print side of things, don't seem to have the appetite or the inclination to scrutinise anything that's coming out of the government, because if they're pro-Brexit, they won't do anything that appears to sort of tarnish the Brexit project. At least that's my theory. You might have a better one. It's 11:47. A lot of concern that journalists can't get access to the most senior of politicians. I had a fascinating chat with Krishna Guru Murphy from Channel 4 News about this the other day, and possibly that has created a vacancy into which the actor Ralf Little has waded furiously, because we're here just to find out a little bit more about his remarkable social media spat with the Secretary of State for Health, Jeremy Hunt, who we've learned you accused of knowingly misleading the public. I mean, just from and we haven't got the fact checkers with us, it seems now to have reached a point where you would no longer claim he knowingly misled the public or knowingly lied, but you'd argue that you'd proved that he had misunderstood or misrepresented the facts, but you'll allow him an unwittingly.
Well, I mean, I actually have got in touch through the magical medium of Twitter.
Yes.
I got in touch with a couple of legal professionals, notably John Cooper QC, a very, very high up legal professional, and said, I'm all right. I think I can prove that Jeremy Hunt knew this but said this, and John's answer was, well, in the eyes of the law, it's not as simple as, even if you can prove somebody knew something, and you have to have extremely forensic cross-examination, and that's just the way it is. So I've withdrawn that. But to be absolutely honest and to be fair to me, I had already withdrawn knowingly. That was in an original tweet, and I said, you knowingly lied.
Yes.
And I withdrew that some time ago. In fact, even in my first, I'm trying to find it now, but even in my first tweet thread, I can't find it, it's written in front of me, but I can't find it. But I actually said, now, either you knew this already and said it anyway, or it's possible you were unaware when you said it. And I said, and I went on in the same tweet to say, I'm choosing, in the interests of debate and transparency, I'm choosing to believe it was that you were unaware. So I did say that, and then I also went on to say, look, let's not call each other names. If you're the decent sort that you say that you are, and you often appear to be on Twitter, let's just have an open conversation, because everybody, the British public, deserves it. Now what's happened is this. Jeremy Hunt is being chased on Twitter by a lot of people for, when are you going to debate Ralf Little? When are you going to talk to Ralf? When are you going to talk to Ralf? And he actually said on Newsbeat, although in defense of him, I think he was slightly ambushed. I was furious. I was like, he's called me out on Newsbeat. I need to go and speak to somebody. It's on. But then I thought about it. I looked carefully. I don't think it was his intent. I think he was ambushed a little. So fair enough. But what he's now doing is he's saying, even though I said twice that I would meet with Ralf, even though I said I would, and his fact checkers and the junior doctors, I can't. I only said I would do that if Ralf could prove his claim that I knowingly lied. Not even lied, but knowingly. The word, and it's the word knowingly.
It's getting a bit semantic, isn't it?
It's getting extremely semantic, and it's getting extremely technical, and it may even be legally sound.
Yes.
But from where I'm sitting, and from where all the traffic I see on Twitter, what it feels like is, this man, who's a clever politician and knows how to produce stats and facts, is obfuscating and avoiding a serious discussion about the NHS and mental health and the future of the NHS off the basis of a semantic argument and a technicality. And I don't think that that's reasonable. I think people deserve better. I think they should know.
What are the key areas of dispute then, Ralf? What are the areas in which you think, knowingly or not, he has got his own facts wrong?
Well, I mean, it's all laid out here, but his 4,300 figure, I sort of dissected extremely carefully.
And he backtracked on that slightly, didn't he?
He did backtrack on it, but what he then did, he in his 27, I think it was 27 tweet thread that he replied back to me, he said, well, hold on, what you're saying, your claim, my original claim was because of this, this, and this, so you're wrong.
Yes.
And he did all that, except the trouble is, I then researched all that, and none of those quite hold up either, because they just don't hold up, because they're cherry-picked statistics. And as I finally replied, Jeremy Hunt's reply to my accusation of cherry-picking statistics is to cherry-pick statistics.
It's interesting.
And the problem is,
just to pick on one of them, because this I think my listeners will find quite remarkable. It says, you are correct that I did misread a briefing and tell the House of Commons that there was a 30,000 increase in mental health staff, when I should have said a 30,000 increase in NHS clinical staff, including in mental health. So he's told the House of Commons there's a 30,000 increase in this very specific sector, and he's covered it up by saying, oh, my bad, actually that was the whole of the NHS. But
this is what I mean. And again, let's say
that was to the House of Commons.
Let's say that that wasn't willfully or knowingly.
No, he misread a briefing.
He misread a briefing. So, it was... I nearly said incompetent. It's not incompetent. It was a mistake, right? But if that's a mistake, and he's owned up to that...
I think you'd get away with incompetent for a Secretary of State of Health to misread a briefing and tell the House of Commons that there are 30,000 more mental health staff, when in fact it was a 30,000 overall increase, including mental health staff. It's kind of huge.
Well, yeah, and Luciana Berger, MP, challenged him on it and really pushed the point home until he backtracked. But, I do also think that backtracking and apologising and holding your hands up is worth something. I actually do. So even though I managed to call him on that, Sorry, I didn't call him on that, but even though I pointed out in my tweet,
Yes.
good for him and good to hold your hands up. It's okay to do that. I think it's okay
You've
to
been
say
very generous, which some people listening would be surprised by. I'm not, because I think I understand exactly where you're coming from on this. But you're also, maybe without realising it, describing circumstances in which he's only ever going to climb down when it's incontrovertible
Yes.
evidence that you've put in front of him,
Well,
which is why you're so desperate to get the opportunity.
And I have. I actually have.
Indeed,
I have put incontrovertible written evidence of what was known and what, because he also, I told him about this stuff in this tweet, and he then came back out on Twitter and said some of it again, even after I've proved it to be a lie.
And that is, as a journalist, I'm used to that, but you are not
So he didn't
in
know.
this world,
He
so
didn't
you're
know.
staggered that a Secretary of State could do that.
Exactly. So, you know, I think, so what he's now doing is going, hey, you said knowingly, you haven't proved knowingly, I don't need to talk to you. And I don't think that that's reasonable. I think, forget about my wishes, forget about me being upset or angry. I don't think it's about that. This is the NHS, and it's the British public, and it's them being told something that just simply doesn't hold up. And I think that should be investigated, and it should be transparent. And I think to hide behind knowingly is a bit cowardly.
That is, and I may be wrong, but that, to me, to knit those two together is the absolute crux of this bizarre scenario, isn't it? It's let's get to the bottom of this issue, shall we, Ralf Little, writes Jeremy Hunt. I talked about the biggest expansion of mental health provision in Europe, which you described as knowingly lying. Now, one of his items of evidence for that claim of the biggest expansion of mental health provision in Europe was the claim that there'd been a 30,000 increase in mental health staff, which he now retreats from and says, I misread that, my mistake, my bad, should have said the opposite. And therefore you can't claim that I did it knowingly. You're in a corner on this, because he could, almost anything that you unearth as being the opposite or different from what he originally claimed, he can just play the knowingly card.
Exactly, and he's absolutely playing that card to avoid having to. I think, personally, I think he's got himself into a bit of a difficult situation.
Why do you think he replied? Do you think he's a massive fan of 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps, and he just couldn't resist?
Who isn't, James? Who isn't?
So why do you think he did? Because, this stuff is popping up on Twitter all the time, and very rarely does a senior politician bother engaging it.
I think I touched a nerve, probably, when I said knowingly lied. Understandably, because it was a very big claim that, as I've said, is probably regrettable. Oh, and by the way, I've retracted. I've officially retracted on Twitter.
I saw, yes.
I said
because you can't prove knowingly.
Yeah, I said, I can't know your mind. I will, in the reply thread to his thread, I said, I will officially retract the word knowingly and apologise. I think I said apologise, and if I didn't, I'm doing it now.
Yes.
I will officially retract the word knowingly, and let's replace it with maybe, probably, didn't know, if we're being generous. Right?
Or wittingly, unwittingly.
Exactly, and I withdrew that. But that's now, he's ignoring that. And we're in the situation, what I could have done was I could have replied to his thread where he's pulled out these cherry-picked statistics, and I could have gone, oh, well, the reason that these aren't true is this. I've checked this with full facts, and I've checked this with full facts. But you know what? Where this has weight and meaning is where people, the audience, the British public, are following it with interest and going, okay,
that's why you're here. Yes.
Yeah, that has meaning. If I just get bogged down into a stats argument, well, hold on, you said this number, but I'm saying this number, and he's like, yeah, but I disagree with that. People, it's not that people aren't clever enough to follow it, but it loses interest. It's like, forget messing about. Let's just sit down and talk. You've said you would twice.
Yes.
Where are you? I'm here.
Well, I can lend you a studio.
Please.
Seriously? So HD ready. Going viral all the time these days.
We've got the cameras, plenty of room for junior doctors and fact checkers here.
We can do the whole thing. We had half a dozen junior doctors in last time they were in dispute with the government.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure, Ralf Little.
Thank you very much.
People who want to follow this or indeed catch up with it, Ralph's Twitter handle is @Ralf with an F Little, Little, or you could just carry on following me and I'll retweet the relevant parts. And the Secretary of State's Twitter handle is @Jeremy_Hunt. That is it. What are you up to? What are you up to next?
Looking forward to Christmas. Yeah, got a lot of fun travelling to do. Manchester, Devon, family everywhere.
Lovely stuff. That's it.
How you doing,